Hi, I'm Jenny Fish from One Big Happy Yarn Company. Welcome to our basic colorwork hat knit along. This pattern was designed by Sarah Delaney in our marketing department, and she was gracious enough to allow us to use her pattern and allow me to show you how to knit this hat. This hat is worked with 2 colors of Malabrigo Rasta super bulky yarn. The kit for this project includes the printed pattern, 2 skeins of contrasting yarn, along with 1 fur pom-pom. In these kits, you will have enough yarn to make 2 mirror image hats. You'll have enough yarn left over to make a pom with the yarn, and then you can use the fur pom, and so both hats will end up with a pom-pom. To check out our pre-selected pairings, you can go to onebighappy.com. Today we're gonna go over supplies, winding yarn, casting on, and joining in the round. Let's get started with our supplies. So the yarn that we'll be using is Malabrigo Rasta. It's a super bulky weight yarn, 100% wool, so it's hand wash only. Don't throw it in the washing machine, although I do have a cute little Notions bag now. Okay, so this comes in a hank. You cannot knit straight from this, so I want to show you how to go from this to this. All right, so here we go. I have a stool that I have had since I was a kid. Like, this thing is over 40 years old. It survived me, it survived all my children, and it also survives my knitting projects. Let me grab this real quick. Here is my lovely stool. Now, I'm going to show you a trick on how I use this stool to turn that into a ball. That's simple. Flip it over. So these are strands of yarn, and they have little ties on them. But if you tried to knit straight from this, it would just become a tangled mess. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the legs on my stool to kind of hold the yarn for me. Now, if you don't have a stool like this, you can flip a chair upside down. You can use cans of like vegetables and set them on the table and put your yarn around those. Just something that's going to hold it and keep it from getting tangled. Because once I cut these little, once I cut these strands right here, this loop of yarn it can get a little fussy and tangly. So we want to rest it on here. Oh, you can also have a friend do this. Their arms might get tired, but I used to do that for my grandma. I'd hold it like this as she wound her ball. But yeah, the stool works great. It's going to hold my yarn for me. So let's show you how we do that. Now I've got it secure. This is going to keep it from tangling. I'm going to cut my label off here and set that aside. And then over here, there's a knot, and I'm going to cut that knot out right there and pull these apart. And this is where I'm going to start winding. Now, the reason why I'm choosing to use my stool to wind this yarn instead of a Swift and a ball winder, which a Swift is like this umbrella thing that'll hold the yarn out for you, and then a ball winder is this little gadget that you hand crank and it winds the ball for you. This yarn is super bulky, and honestly, I tried to use my Swift and my ball winder, and it's just too much bulk to fit and use properly. And then I found that it only took me just a few minutes to hand wind it. So that's why I'm showing you this today. This is the easiest way and the quickest way to do this. Another tip that I'm going to give you. When you're hand winding a ball, you can make a center pull ball by just starting here, wrapping around your fingers, and then you can pull from the center as you work along. But with this yarn, I have found just winding it normally and pulling from the outside is less fussy and less of a mess. There's a lot of fuzz on this yarn, and sometimes when you're pulling from the center, that fuzz tangles up on the inside, and then you get yarn guts, and it's not pretty. So for this, I'm just going to go ahead and just wrap over my fingers a few times, pull it out, then I'm going to go another direction. And as I'm doing this, let me pull this out. Maybe you can see a little bit more if I do this. as I'm pulling this out, now see, and there's some of the fuzzies getting tangled up. Just pull them apart. I'm going to go around like this and around. And then once I get a lot on this side, I'm going to flip the ball and go the other direction. And if you see that it's starting to get like a little out of sorts, it is okay to stop and make sure that it's all stretched out, because that'll help you as you go along. I'm going to go ahead and just keep going. This is the tail. I'm going to put that on the inside there so I don't get caught up with it. And just bring it around. And keep winding and winding and winding. There we go. Just keep going until you get all of this into a ball, and then we'll be ready to cast on. We are using a US size 15, and it is a 10 millimeter needle. So this is a pretty big needle. I've got a 16-inch cord for these, and we're going to be casting on 48 stitches. And for this project, I tried a couple of different cast on. Use whatever you're comfortable with, but I really liked using the knitted cast on for this one, so I'm going to show you how to work the knitted cast on. First off, you start with a slip knot, and you're going to put your needle into the slip knot like normal, and now we're going to simply knit into that slip knot. Let me put this over here so you can see what I'm doing here. Knit into that, wrap the yarn around. Now when you pull it out, I like to put a little twist in it. By doing that, I bring it forward and bring this in. I'm going to twist it just a little bit. I'll show you that again. Knit into here, bring it around, and then because I'm picking it up this way, it twists that just a little bit. And I just like the edge that it gives. Let me do a few more and I'll show you what that edge looks like. Knit around. So we're going to do this 48 times till we have 48 stitches, and there's that edge I was going to show you. So you can really see it with this bulky Rasta yarn. You can really see that cast on edge. And that's going to be at the brim of your hat right before you start your ribbing. That's your foundation stitches. And I like the way this works, but like I said, if you have another cast on method that you like, feel free to use that. The main thing is, we want 48 stitches on here before we continue. So I'm going to continue doing my knitted cast on until I have 48 stitches, and then I'll show you how we join in the round. Okay, so I have my 48 stitches that I have cast on. I used the knitted cast on method that gives me this really nice ridge down here that I personally like. Okay, now what we need to do is join these two ends together so that we can start knitting our hat around. I like to do a little twisty method at the beginning when I'm joining in the round. So we want to make sure that we have all of our stitches in a row. This line right here is indicating none of them are twisted backwards, forward. They are all nice and even right across the inside of my cord here. Okay, my active yarn right now is on the right side and my tail is on the left side. What I want to do is bring these together so that I can start knitting in the round. This side here has the slip knot where we began. So what I like to do is just pop that one off and pick up this stitch from this side and slide it on that needle and then slide this through here. And that just kind of twists the first and the last stitch, and it just gives it a little bit more structure in that join area that gets a little bit of attention. So when you switch them like that, they're twisted and secure. So now what we want to do is get ready to knit, and we need to place a stitch marker on here. These are a size 15, a 10 millimeter needle. They're pretty thick. Your standard stitch markers don't really fit on these needles. So I have some options that I use for this. Number one, an elastic hairband. It works really well. It'll sit on there and it won't slide under your stitches, and it holds your place. We also scrap yarn. You can tie that into a loop, slide that on there. That'll hold your spot. And when all else fails, and I really did use this, a bangle bracelet. I had it next to me and I was like, oh, that'll work. I slide it on here, it just hangs around. Now it does get a little fussy and clinky against the metal, but it does work in a pinch. But these are some of the options that you can use to mark the beginning of your round, so that you don't lose your place. And then you just start knitting. So now that I've given you the information on the yarn, how to wind it, cast on, join without twisting, go ahead and place your beginning of the round stitch marker, and then join me in the next episode where we'll dive in and continue knitting this basic colorwork hat from ribbing to blocking. Remember, you can get a kit with the yarn and the pattern at onebighappy.com. Be sure to hit the subscribe button below and click the bell to be notified every time we have a new video. Happy knitting!